you're a horror fan, you're eating good today. I'm going over a bunch of horror films that are free to stream right now. You heard me right, you can stream these horror films over on Tubi right now. The only downside is sometimes there's ads. But I'm gonna be honest with you right now, I was on my computer while I was doing most of this research, and I didn't come across very many ads. I will say on the TV app there were more noticeable ads. When I was on my computer, there weren't very many. I was very surprised and I was like, where do the ads come up? Like, when are they happening? So do what you will with that information. A lot of us grew up with commercials anyway. You always use that time to go to the bathroom, grab a snack. It's not that bad, you'll live. The cool thing about Tubi is you don't even need to sign up for an account. You can, but you can just press play on anything without signing in at all. Just go to tubitv.com, find one of these movies and press play. It's that easy. It's like winning the scary movie lottery over here. So I separated these movies into a few categories so you can jump around to the categories in specific movies. And one thing to note is I've talked about a lot of horror movies at this point, and I'm not gonna mention each and every time whether they were in a previous video or not. Just know that some of these videos I've already talked about, but now we're talking about the ones that are free to stream. So it's a whole separate video, just don't worry about it. These streaming services are constantly changing, so I'm gonna try to update these videos as often as possible. So make sure to like and subscribe so you can come back to the channel and see what's streaming at any given time in the future. We're starting off with 3 slasher flicks that I think you need to go watch right now, especially if you've never seen them. First is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know this is a given for a lot of you, but I've encountered a lot of horror fans recently who have not seen the original, and I think that is a horror sin if you ask me. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was released in 1974, and it set the bar sky high for slashers moving forward. The movie still holds up because of its gritty realism and relentless terror. Tell me this movie doesn't still terrify you, and I'll tell you you're full of shit. The story begins with a group of friends who are going on a little road trip through rural Texas, and eventually they get stranded and they're looking for help. They end up at an isolated farmhouse looking for assistance, but unbeknownst to them, this is the home of Leatherface, a chainsaw-wielding maniac and his twisted family who have a taste for human flesh. Like I said, this movie is very gritty and real. It spawned so many sequels and remakes. You don't necessarily have to see them all, but the original for sure should be at the top of your list. And also, am I alone in this? I think that Leatherface, when compared to the other horror icons like Ghostface, Michael Myers, Pinhead, Jason Voorhees, he gets like the least amount of love. Am I alone in that? Sleepaway Camp is a cult classic. It's a bizarre horror film that isn't just your run-of-the-mill slasher, although its sequels do follow the formula a little bit more closely. The original follows 2 kids, a shy and reserved Angela and her overprotective cousin Ricky, as they're sent to Camp Arawak for the summer. And then soon after arriving, there's a series of brutal and mysterious deaths, and so they must figure out who's doing it and why and all that good stuff. This movie is filled with bizarre acting and cheesy lines, but it's still so great and amazing and fun.
This guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet. Come on, Bill.
Everything leads to a jaw-dropping climax that will leave you reeling and will be imprinted into your mind forever, like it has been for so many of us already. High Tension is also known as Switchblade Romance, and it's a French gory slasher that is one of the most controversial horror films in history, and that's mostly because of its ending. It's about 2 women, Marie and Alex, who just want a quiet, peaceful weekend getaway, and so they go stay at Alex's family's farmhouse. However, on the night of their arrival, a psychotic serial killer invades the home. Marie must then outsmart a relentless predator and save her friend Alex and also escape. It really begs the question, what lengths would you go to save your best friend? Like I said, this movie is quite controversial, so come back after watching it and let me know what side of the fence you're sitting on. Now let's cut to a poll. I did a poll over on Threads asking which of these 3 slashers people would rather watch in case you need some further guidance and you really want to just watch a slasher tonight. The voting is heavily swayed towards Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There are some comments here that state, watch the original, not the 2003 remake. High Tension just has that revenge survival mode to it. It's beautifully written, that's debatable. Just the weight and legacy of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the impact it had on the genre as a whole. I learned something new about the film every time I watch it, so rewatchability. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the first truly American slasher, and then TCM bothers me every time I watch it. So a lot of love for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sleepaway Camp came in second, and then High Tension in third place. One thing I will say about Tubi is that the movies it has on it are usually at least a few years old, so you're not gonna find any brand new films on there. It's just one thing I kind of noticed, especially when looking for supernatural horror films on there. There's nothing like The Conjuring or The Grudge or Insidious or any of those franchises on there. You can watch those in other places, but there are two very good supernatural films that I saw that I would definitely recommend you watch. First one is Hellraiser, and this is the original 1987, not the remake that just came out in 2022. Hellraiser is one of the most twisted horror films in existence, if you ask me personally. It spawned too many sequels. So if you've seen all the sequels, let me know down below and I will send you a cookie. But yeah, essentially there's this like little puzzle box that when put together and solved, summons these demons called the Cenobites. You've probably seen the leader of the Cenobites, Pinhead. He's a very iconic horror villain. And in this first film, a man solves the puzzle and the Cenobites are summoned, and it's basically him trying to escape the underworld and escape the grasp of these Cenobites. It's a very interesting flick. It's a masterclass on practical effects and will have you saying what the fuck more times than you can count. And you may recognize some common horror quotes that actually stemmed from this movie. Highly, highly recommend. I love Hellraiser. Dead Silence has slowly become a cult classic over time, but it was not very well received at first. There is a lot of crossover in like the cast and crew between this and Saw. It's another Leigh Whannell and James Wan film, and this was their follow-up to Saw. It's about a man who returns to his hometown called Raven's Fair to find answers about his wife's death. His investigation leads him to a ghost of a ventriloquist named Mary Shaw, who seems to have some weird ties to his family tree. Leigh Whannell and James Wan have both gone on record to say this isn't the favorite film of theirs. It sounds like there was a lot of studio interference, but they also state that they learned a lot of valuable lessons while making this bad horror film. But personally, I don't think it's bad at all. Like I said, it's got a cult following, definitely worth checking out. Now we're getting into found footage territory. We are blessed with 3 amazing found footage horror films over on Tubi for free. If you're looking for jump scares, eerie atmospheres, and unknown actors, then these found footage films are where you should go. Of course, unless you're not a fan of the style or it makes you sick or anything like that. Grave Encounters follows a reality TV ghost hunter crew, and it's kind of framed at the beginning as this show was canceled after 5 episodes because the crew disappeared, and then they've recovered the footage that was being recorded for the 6th episode. So that's what we get. We're watching this footage that was recovered from the 6th and final episode. We follow them as they explore an abandoned psychiatric hospital where unexplained things have been happening, and it's kind of insinuated at the beginning that a lot of the show is staged or fake, which adds a layer of realism to it because I feel like that's how most people think of those shows in the real world. So we get that aspect thrown in there as well as we begin the film. There are some great jump scares in this film. It's got that eerie atmosphere and it really creeped me out and still does. It's a fun watch, especially for found footage fanatics. I'm going to start off talking about the Australian found footage film The Tunnel by saying that it's going to give you heavy As Above, So Below vibes. As Above, So Below came out years later, and I think that it was heavily inspired by The Tunnel. So if that interests you, you should definitely go watch this movie. It's framed as a documentary, just like As Above, So Below. So there are bits and pieces of interviews spliced throughout the film, and these were recorded after the events that took place in the film. It's about a group of journalists who are investigating this government cover-up, which is related to them abandoning this water recycling project. And their research leads them to an abandoned labyrinth of underground tunnels, and then once they go down into the tunnels to further explore, the horror starts. This was a really great film, lots of scary vibes, and a lot of interesting things about the marketing behind this film. It came out way back in 2011, but there's a documentary right now on Shudder that goes all behind the scenes of how they marketed this movie and how they got it made, and it's very interesting. So if you like the behind the scenes type stuff and you like this film, go check out the documentary as well. Hell House LLC was a breath of fresh air when it comes to found footage films and the horror genre as a whole. It's about a group of friends who decide they want to open up a haunted house attraction in an actual abandoned hotel in Abaddon, New York. They think this is the perfect spot for the haunted house because of its dark secrets, but once they get things going, they realize it's a little bit more terrifying than they initially thought. I will give a little bit of a caveat. If you hate clowns and you don't like clowns in horror films, stay away from this one because there are some pretty scary instances in this one involving clowns. The film has spawned 3 sequels so far, and I think they're all worth checking out. I think they're all on Tubi, otherwise they're over on Amazon Prime. All right, let's lighten the mood for a little bit, shall we? We're gonna dive into a few comedy horrors that you should check out right now. Again, for free on Tubi. You don't need money. Put your wallet away. Cooties is a 2014 horror comedy where a mysterious food virus suddenly turns all these little munchkins at this elementary school into terrifying flesh-eating zombies. It has a cast of people that we love, including Elijah Wood, Rainn Wilson, Jack McBrayer, Lee Winnell's even in this. Mentioned him a couple times on this channel. All these adults play teachers at the school, and so if you want to watch all these little zombies kind of terrorize these teachers and them trying to survive and escape, this could be a fun little romp for you.
You can't eat the teachers, man!
Housebound is about a rebellious woman, Kylie Bucknell. She's sentenced to house arrest, so she has to go back home and live with her mom for a little bit. But she has to face a little bit more than just her quirky mother. As Kylie endures her confinement, strange and unsettling events begin to unfold, suggesting that the house might be haunted. The humor in this is very cheeky and sarcastic and just lends to a very great, fun horror atmosphere all around. With a perfect blend of humor and horror, Kylie teams up with her mom and a security guard to find out what exactly is happening in their house. It's a ghost story. Killer Klowns from Outer Space. You've probably heard the name of this film so many times and you're like, I have no idea what that movie is, but hopefully that's about to change. The movie is as outrageous as the title suggests. It's about a small town being invaded by aliens that look like these very creepy, scary clowns. It's about a group of friends who must outsmart these aliens before their whole town becomes this twisted funhouse of doom. There are some wacky kills in this one. Feel free to just go watch the kill count over on the Dead Meat channel. You basically watch the whole film over there anyway. This is a B movie, it's a cult classic, and it's got a cult following large enough to warrant a video game that just came out. All right, we're going back to the other end of the spectrum with some disturbing movies. Comedy, disturbing. Two ends of the spectrum. Here we go. These are for the people who feel like they're desensitized to horror films and they just don't think they've seen anything sadistic and sick enough to satiate their horror needs. These are the films that you should go check out. I Spit on Your Grave. I don't usually like recommending this movie to people. It's the original. Trigger warning, SA, and the R word. You'll get a lot of that in this film. Very drawn out, disturbing scenes, and it's basically a revenge story about a woman who is assaulted and exacts revenge on her captors. It's kind of one of those completionist movies where you're just watching it to say that you've watched this list of disturbing movies. It's another controversial film. Some people think that it's a pointless movie and one of the worst horror movies made, while others say that it plays a pretty important part in horror history. My stance is, like I said, I don't really like recommending this to people, and you should really only watch it to check it off of a disturbing movie list if you're really that worried about watching it. Eden Lake is a British horror film that was released in 2008, and it stars everybody's favorite Michael Fassbender. Jenny and her boyfriend Steve want to get a little romantic getaway, and so they decide to visit this remote lake to just get away and be together in holy matrimony. Just kidding, they're not getting married. They're just being boyfriend and girlfriend, which is fine. However, a group of teenagers starts harassing the couple, and it quickly turns into this unrelenting, brutal game of cat and mouse. Will they escape? You'll have to find out yourself, but again, just keep in mind this is in the disturbing category, and so there will be a disturbing scene or two, and this is definitely not like a feel-good horror movie. You can go into this movie knowing that. Ask any community of horror fans what their favorite disturbing horror film is, and you'll see dozens and dozens and dozens of comments saying Martyrs. This feels like one of the only universally accepted good horror films that's also very disturbing, and most people say that they only needed to watch it once and then never again, and I don't blame them. Martyrs is a French horror film that beautifully intertwines this revenge story with these profound existential questions as well. The story follows Lucy, a woman who experienced years of brutal captivity as a child, and then she was thrust into this orphanage, and she met her friend Anna, who also was a victim of abuse. And then Lucy embarks on a quest for vengeance against the ones who tormented her, and she brings Anna along for the ride. The movie takes a few twists and turns that make it feel like you're watching a couple different movies at different points, but it all fits together beautifully. It's very bleak and again disturbing, so viewer be warned. This is a film that I think every horror fan should watch, and then you can encourage others to join our little cult here of Martyrs lovers. One of us, one of us. Also, I need to say this, make sure you're hitting play on the original French Martyrs from 2008. not the god-awful US remake that was made a few years ago. I think it came out in 2016. Do not watch that one. That one sucks. Watch 2008. You're welcome. All right, we're gonna continue to stay away from the US as we get into the next category, which is Asian horror. Train to Busan is a Korean horror action zombie flick that centers around events that happen on a train. The plot centers around a reluctant father who boards a train with his daughter to take her to her mother, who's about an hour away. I think they're going from Seoul to Busan. Unbeknownst to the passengers, there's a zombie outbreak happening in South Korea, and an infected person ends up on the train before they're able to leave. And then of course that leads to an outbreak on the train itself. So of course there's this claustrophobic, trapped element added in there as well. This movie is great for adrenaline junkies who love action in their horror, and it's a great exploration of sacrifice and humanity. One thing I must note, please, for the love of God, do not watch the dubbed version, watch the original Korean version with English subtitles. I watched the dubbed version for a few minutes and I could immediately tell that it was gonna take away from the impact of this film. So yeah, don't watch the dubbed version, it's very silly. Gonjiam Haunted Asylum is a found footage horror film about a web series crew who decide to explore a haunted psychiatric hospital in South Korea. What starts as a fun exploration quickly spirals into a nightmare. If this premise sounds familiar at all, it's because we already talked about Grave Encounters. This is essentially the Korean version of Grave Encounters, although it came out like 7 years later, so the technology used in the film by the web series crew has been updated a little bit. I will say I personally think that Grave Encounters is the better movie, but if you watch Grave Encounters and you just want more of the same vibes, come watch Gonjiam Haunted Asylum. This flick still definitely rivals some of the best found footage horror films out there. Battle Royale got a rare 15+ rating in Japan, and it was banned in several countries. I think the main reason is just because it's young people set to kill each other, which is, you know, it's kind of horrifying in its own right. I don't think there's anything else about this film that would necessarily cause it to be banned. For over a decade, the original production company refused to sell the film rights to any US distributor, but eventually it was sold and it got a direct-to-video release in the US. This is a fun little tidbit for folks who are film buffs outside of horror. Quentin Tarantino himself said that if there's any film in the past 2 decades that he wished he would have made, it's Battle Royale. So that's pretty high praise for a film, especially a foreign horror film. Like, Quentin Tarantino backs it. Obviously it's got to be on your watch list. So in the movie, Japan has put into place this Battle Royale Act that's supposed to control unruly youth. So this class of 9th graders is chosen and transported to this deserted island, and they must basically battle to the death because it's either 1 survives or 0 survives is essentially the premise of the rules. This is a great film to research after the fact for all of the subtle messages that people think they were going for in making this movie. This is a very important film because it set the blueprint for a lot of films that have been made since that follow this same kind of premise, a la Hunger Games. All right, quick break to head over to Threads again to talk about another poll that I made. There are many foreign horror films on this entire list of free movies that you can stream on Tubi. So I went over to Threads and asked a bunch of horror fans which of these foreign horror films they would rather watch. We had Train to Busan, Martyrs, High Tension, and The Tunnel on there. And Train to Busan won by a landslide. In second place was Martyrs, which barely beat out The Tunnel. And then High Tension was at the end. And that's the second poll that High Tension has been in, and it's been at the lowest rung of the ladder there. So obviously the Threads community are not huge fans of High Tension. Let's get back to the list. All right, I'm gonna close out this video by talking about 3 really great horror films that I personally love. I couldn't quite find a category title that would group these 3 in together, so I'm just calling it my personal favorites and must-watch horror films. These last 3 we're talking about are The Descent, Cube, and Jeepers Creepers. Starting with The Descent. The Descent is a modern classic that's turning 20 soon, which is crazy to think about. It's not for the faint of heart. In this film, we follow a group of friends who are going on a cave expedition, and things kind of go wrong and they find themselves trapped down in the caves. Another claustrophobic setting for us, and they find out that they're not alone down there in the depths. This movie came out before jump scares were getting way overdone, so of course there's a few great jump scares in it. It's got that eerie, creepy atmosphere to it, claustrophobia, like I said, all the great makings of an amazing horror film. And also make sure to look up both endings to see which one you like better as well. There was a Descent 2, but it's not nearly as good as the first one. Alright, Jeepers Creepers, before any of you can say it, I'm just going to lay it out there. I'm not going to talk about the drama behind the scenes of this movie. That's something that you can go research on your own. In this instance, I'm going to be separating the art from the artist. I grew up watching this movie on repeat. It's a beloved horror movie to me and many others, and it sits at the core of my love of horror. It really helped start that fire inside. Jeepers Creepers is about a brother and sister who are on this long road trip as they travel home for summer break. And while they're driving on the highway, they are vehicularly harassed by this mysterious driver in this old beaten down truck. They witness the driver of the truck doing something very mysterious and decide to investigate, and then all hell kind of breaks loose. This film spawned 3 sequels at this point, I think, and you could definitely live without watching any of them, although Jeepers Creepers 2 can be a fun watch in the right setting. This film is really important because Justin Long, who is now a very important horror icon, stars in it, and this was his first horror film, and I think the 3rd film overall that he starred in, which is pretty interesting. I will be honest and say that I haven't always been a fan of the 3rd act of this film, but the first 2/3 of the movie more than make up for it. It's just, there's so many iconic scenes and lines and images that I think a horror fan should definitely witness. So I would definitely watch this if you're looking for that road trip, bro and sis, creature feature type horror film. Alright, the big kahuna. I finally get to talk about Cube on this channel. I'm going to tell it to you straight. Cube is my favorite horror film, and I'll even admit that it's not the best horror film ever made, but it's my favorite and I can never get enough of it. It might be nearing the top of horror films that I've rewatched the most. It's getting up there. Cube is a movie about a group of strangers who wake up in a giant cube consisting of a bunch of smaller cubes. Some of the cubes are rigged with deadly traps, and so once this group of people find each other, they're tasked with A, finding out why they're there, and B, how to get the hell out of there. The premise alone is very intriguing to me, and the mystery alone is what drives that desire for me to watch it over and over again. Yes, the acting is over the top, it's cheesy at times, it's campy, but that's part of its charm if you ask me. Also, prepare to be introduced to your new favorite horror villain, Quentin.
So you go around outraged, sticking your nose up other people's assholes, sniffing their business.
Lots of fun trivia about this movie to look up after the fact, so make sure that after you watch the movie you head over to IMDb and look up some of that. There are 3 movies in this franchise and they're all available on Tubi. There is a dip in quality in the other 2 films, but I think it's a great watch for people who are fans of the first one. I personally think it laid the groundwork for movies like Saw, Escape Room, and other horror films that have that type of premise. I would just love in the comments down below if you let me know if you watched Cube, if you love it, if you hate it. Let's talk about Cube. Let's just turn this into a Cube forum. Alright, spooky friends, if you're this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. I give you like, what, 15 or so movies to go watch, so there's a lot to add to your watch list. It's going to be a long weekend. I hope you find a new favorite horror movie from this list, or you get to revisit some favorites that you've seen already. If you find other great horror movies on Tubi, let the people know by commenting down below. There's a few other streaming services that I plan on making these videos for. I've done Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Hulu, and now Tubi. Let's see what else we got. We're going to talk about Shudder. What other streaming services can you think of that I should cover? Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more fun, exciting, and informative horror content. And remember to embrace the fear all year round.